Listen. Yes, listen carefully. I will tell you everything. People say I am mad, but I am not. It is true. I have always been very, very nervous. I still am. But nervous does not mean crazy. In fact, my sickness made my senses stronger. My hearing became sharper than any normal person. I could hear everything in heaven, everything on earth, and even things in hell. So how can you say I am mad? Let me tell you the whole story, calmly and clearly. I don't know exactly when the idea first came into my mind, but once it entered, it never left. Day and night it stayed with me. It was not for money. It was not because of anger. I did not hate the old man. I loved him. He never hurt me. He never insulted me. I did not want his gold. No, it was his eye. Yes, his eye. One of his eyes looked like a vulture's eye, pale blue with a thin, cloudy film over it. Whenever he looked at me with that eye, cold fear ran through my body. Slowly, very slowly, I decided that I had to take the old man's life, just to get rid of that eye forever. Now listen carefully. This is important. You think I am mad, but mad people do not plan things so carefully. Mad people do not think with such patience. You should have seen how clever I was, how cautious, how secretly I worked. During the whole week before I killed him, I was never kinder to the old man. I spoke to him gently. I asked him how he felt. I acted like a loving friend. And every night, exactly at midnight, I went to his door. I turned the lock slowly, oh, so slowly, and opened the door just a little. When the opening was just big enough for my head, I put in my lantern. It was a dark lantern, closed tightly so that no light could escape. Then I pushed my head inside the room. You would have laughed if you saw how slowly I moved. I moved inch by inch so I would not wake him. Sometimes it took me a whole hour just to put my head far enough inside so that I could see him sleeping in his bed. When my head was finally inside the room, I slowly opened the lantern. Oh, so slowly, so carefully. I knew the hinges made a small sound, so I opened it only a tiny bit, just enough for one thin line of light to fall on the old man's eye, the vulture eye. I did this for 7 nights, every night at midnight. But every night, the eye was closed, and I could not do my work unless the eye was open, because it was not the old man who troubled me. It was that terrible eye. Each morning when the sun came up, I went into his room. I called his name in a warm, friendly voice. I asked him how he slept. I spoke with confidence, so he would never suspect that I had been watching him every night at 12. But then came the 8th night. On this night, I was even more careful than before. I opened the door more slowly than the hand of a clock moves. Never in my life had I felt so powerful, so clever. I was excited, almost proud. Here I was, opening the door little by little, and he had no idea what I was doing. I even let out a small laugh. Maybe he heard it because suddenly he moved in his bed as if startled. You might think I stepped back, but no, I did not. The room was completely dark, black like thick tar. The shutters were closed tight because the old man was afraid of robbers. I knew he couldn't see the door opening, so I kept pushing it slowly, steadily, patiently. My head was inside, and I was just about to open the lantern again when my thumb slipped on the metal latch. Clink! The old man jumped up in his bed and shouted, "Who's there?" I froze. I did not answer. I did not move. For a whole hour, I stayed completely still. Not a single muscle moved. And during all that time, I never heard him lie back down. He was sitting up in bed, listening, just as I had listened many nights before. He was still sitting up in his bed, listening in the dark, just the way I had sat many nights, listening to the creepy ticking inside the walls. Then I heard a soft groan. I knew that sound. It wasn't pain, and it wasn't sadness. No, this was the sound of pure terror, the kind that rises from the deepest place in a person's soul. I recognized it instantly. Many nights around midnight when the world slept, I had made that same sound myself, a sound that only made my fear worse. Yes, I understood exactly what the old man felt. And though I pitied him deep down, I still laughed inside. He had been awake ever since that faint noise, the small movement that startled him earlier. His fear had grown and grown. He tried to convince himself it was nothing. It's just the wind, just a mouse crossing the floor, maybe a cricket chirping once. He tried everything, but nothing worked, because death was already there, casting its dark shadow over him, touching him before it touched him. And somehow, even though he couldn't see or hear me, he felt my presence in the room, felt my head sticking inside, felt the danger he couldn't explain. I waited patiently, silently, for a long time. Still no sound of him lying back down. So I decided to open the lantern just a crack, a tiny, tiny crack. I opened it slowly, so slowly you cannot imagine. Finally, a faint beam of light slipped out, thin as a spider's thread, and shone directly on the vulture eye. It was open, wide open, and rage burned through me as I stared at it. That pale blue eye, covered with a sick veil-like film, made my bones feel cold. I saw nothing else, just that eye. Then a new sound reached my ears, a low, dull, fast beat, like a watch, wrapped in cotton. I knew that sound too. It was the old man's heart. It beat faster, faster, louder, louder. His terror must have been immense. The sound made my fury rise, the way a drum gives a soldier courage. But still, I stayed quiet. Still, I held the lantern steady. Still, I kept the light fixed exactly on the eye. The heart's pounding grew quicker and louder, louder, louder. Do you understand? I had told you I am nervous, so I am. And in that silent old house, in the middle of the night, that strange beating filled me with uncontrollable fear. I stood still for several more minutes, but the sound only grew louder. I thought the heart would burst. Then a new fear gripped me. The neighbors would hear it. His time had come. With a loud scream, I threw the lantern open and jumped into the room. He cried out once, only once. In seconds, I dragged him to the floor and pulled the heavy bed over him. I smiled then. The job was done. But the heart still beat, quietly, muffled. It didn't bother me. No one would hear it through the walls. Finally, it stopped. He was dead, truly, completely dead. His eye would torment me no more. Now, if you still think I'm mad, listen carefully. You'll change your mind when you hear the clever way I hid the body. The night was nearly over, so I worked fast and silently. I cut the body into pieces, head, arms, legs. Then I lifted 3 planks from the floor and hid everything underneath. I replaced the boards perfectly. Not a mark, no blood, nothing. I had been careful. A tub caught it all, not a single stain. When I finished, it was 4 o'clock, still as dark as midnight, and then a knock at the door. I went down happily. What had I to fear? 3 men entered. They were police officers. A neighbor had heard a shriek and reported it. I smiled. I welcomed them inside. I explained the cry. It had been mine, a nightmare. The old man? He was away in the country. I showed them the whole house, told them to search anywhere. Finally, I brought them to his bedroom. I showed them everything, untouched. Feeling bold, almost proud of my work, I brought out chairs. I set my own chair right above the spot where the body lay hidden beneath the floorboards. They were satisfied, completely at ease. But soon, I felt pale and sick inside. A ringing started in my ears, faint at first, then stronger. I talked more, louder, trying to ignore it. But the sound grew clearer, sharper. It wasn't in my ears. My blood turned cold. The same dull, muffled, fast beating, like a watch wrapped in cotton. The heart, his heart. I talked faster, louder. The officers didn't react. Didn't they hear it? The sound grew louder. I paced the room. I shouted. I argued. I slammed the chair on the floor. Still, the sound grew louder. 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 They smiled. They chatted. Were they mocking me? Did they know? Were they torturing me with their calm faces? I couldn't bear it. Anything was better than that sound, than their smiles, than the agony inside me. The beating grew louder, louder, louder. Finally, I snapped. "Villains!" I screamed. Stop pretending! I did it! Tear up the floorboards! Here! Right here! It's the beating of his hideous heart!